views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
Boy, Daryl is a pretty kinky guy. He wants to put handcuffs on people to keep them in the room. News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. And on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, and where you should be subscribing to my Twitter feed. Twitter.com/Gary Baumgarten, so you know what's going on around the world, stuff that you may or may not hear about in the mainstream media. And thanks to our great friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I am trying to speak in a subdued voice because I want to go to Alan next, and Alan keeps complaining that I shout too much when I get passion in my soul that I have to express during the show. We're going to talk about Obama's speech that we will be carrying tomorrow, his joint address, sorry about that, his address to the joint session of Congress. But before we do that, there are a couple of items in the news with regard to Afghanistan. I just wanted to talk to Alan Jacey about them for a second. You know, Alan, I've been talking about the fears that I have of a military buildup in Afghanistan with no clear mission, and that that Afghanistan threatens to become Obama's Iraq because the changing of the mission with a buildup in Iraq, in my opinion, led to the lack of public support for President Bush's strategy in Iraq, and without sufficient public support, you're just not going to be successful. And plus, you need to know what your mission is. And this is just me talking. I'm no military strategist. I never served in the military. But this is how I feel about it. And I don't know if you caught it, but the McClatchy newspapers are now quoting Pentagon officials, other military officials, and even soldiers on the ground in Afghanistan. They did a pretty extensive survey of people. And I know it's anecdotal, but given who they're hearing it from, I find it interesting, and they're basically saying exactly what I'm saying. Now, I'm not, you know, as I said, a military strategist, but from a political standpoint, and you are our political correspondent, would you agree with me that there's a danger here that if there's not a defined mission, and the original mission was, of course, to find Osama bin Laden, if you keep changing your goals as they did in Iraq, does the president expose himself to the potential loss of support that the previous president did with regard to Iraq?
Well, hi, Gary. Hello, everybody. Yeah, he does, Gary. And at this point, I think you're already starting to see a lot of that support eroding. You know, I think that a good portion of his base are now seeing that this clearly is a war without a mission at this point. We seem to be propping up what now appears to be an unpopular government in Afghanistan with this election, or so-called election that seems to have been based on the Iranian model of stuffing the ballots. The UN panel that was put in place to supervise this election has said there's a lot of fraud going on. So I think with this type of fraud, and Karzai is not popular in the Obama White House anyway, I think that you're going to continue to see a lot more people questioning why are we still in Afghanistan. We already have somewhat of an exit strategy out of Iraq next year, but we clearly seem to not have any kind of conclusive strategy with Afghanistan. And I think it's just, you know, where things are so difficult at home, I think more and more people are going to be questioning why are we in a mission that is clearly has no winning strategy at all to prop up an unpopular government, a corrupt government, and that clearly just we don't know at this point. Also, if unlike in Iraq, will an Afghanistani security force ever be able to stand on its own and to take over, to relieve the burden of the NATO troops that are there, which are primarily the U.S. and British forces. Not to say that there aren't other forces on the ground, but that the bulk of the casualties have been U.S. and British forces. So I just think that it continues to be more and more unpopular here. I mean, we're even seeing some of the neocons turning against it. I mean, last week, George Will, the noted conservative columnist and pundit, came out against the Afghanistan mission. So when the neocons are turning away from it, that there clearly is a sign that there is no defined strategy on that both the left and the right can see with continuing the incursion in Afghanistan.
Well, they went in to get Osama bin Laden, and one could argue that it was basically a police action using the military, of course, because it is overseas. And I'm struck by the fact that there are criminals that are sometimes thought to be holed up in certain locations here domestically, and the cops go with force looking for the person, but sometimes it's what we call a dry hole. The guy is gone by the time the cops arrive. They search, and he is gone. And all the intel would suggest that if he's not in Pakistan, he's at least in a section of Afghanistan that we just can't get to. So you don't consider it a defeat if you go after somebody and they're not there when you get there, but you call the cops back to the station and you live to fight another day. And at this point, I don't know why we just don't say we went in there, we looked for him, we couldn't find him, he eluded our dragnet, and we'll have to find another way of getting to him. Maybe with a small incursionary force, maybe the way the Israelis sometimes go after people who attack them around the world, like after the Munich Olympics attack on the Israeli athletes. They went out there and they found everybody that was responsible for that, and they put a bullet through their heads or blew them up. And I have no problem with our government going and finding Osama bin Laden and putting a bullet through his head. Boom, and just end it. Save the taxpayers a lot of money right then and there. And maybe that's what we ought to be doing and not putting our soldiers in harm's way. Now, here's the other issue that's a bit of a political issue, Alan, JC, and it has to do with the way our involvement in Afghanistan is being